Congruence to all of yous. This is an open broadcast information for the benefit of the citizens of this world. It also is applicable to the armed forces, anybody in a trust position, or fiduciaries, as well as church and faith leaders. A breach of trust has been uncovered by this Federal Postal Court judge and plenipotentiary judge, as well as the staff of the Federal Postal Court. The breach of trust deals with the very fundamentals of commerce, faith, as well as, once again, trust. At this stage, I'm going to ask the citizens of this world to take out their dollar notes, pound notes, euro notes, or whichever denomination in whichever country you're in. Take it out of your pocket and I will show you live on this broadcast. Alpha is with me. Alpha, can you come forward, please? Is there something that you wish to give me? Thank you. Alpha, are you in the private or in the public?
I'm in the public.
You're in the public. Thank you very much. And you're porting a discovery that you have made on the currency.
I am.
And you are a Live Life claimant as well.
I am.
Thank you very much. I will first of all start with the dollar. This is your dollar, and I will be steady and methodical in my description of what I am going to show you. And this is the front, this is the back, or vice versa. What I would like you to do now is realize that this is a Federal Private Reserve note, which means this was in the private. Alpha, who is a Live Life claimant, has handed this notes as evidence to me, which is denominations as well as currencies of different countries. It has now come into the hands of this Federal Postal Court judge and plenipotentiary judge. And because it has now travelled into the world of the public, it is no longer in the private hands. I am not a member of the Federal Reserve Bank, nor ever I was. These private notes has now travelled into my jurisdiction. On first examination, I am looking at the dollar note, US dollar as it were, as well as the $10. You guys can open up any of these instruments, Federal Reserve private notes, calling itself dollar. As a Federal Postal Court judge, I noticed that there is a box on both sides. Any box on a piece of paper has different games on it, like a tennis court. A court that has different lines within that court has different rules. Some are called out of court. When your ballpoint pen, or any evidence hits another piece of box in that court, there are different rules. I am now going to break open this Federal Reserve private note because it's now in the hands of the public. I'm going to put 2 strikes onto it. It is now being spent, and in the front as well. In doing so, I have opened up the box to let in the air and the light in for this Federal Postal Court judge to examine this instrument, this note, this piece of paper. On first examination, I noticed that there is no dollar sign on it, whether that is a double bar sign or a single sign. Any note, ladies and gentlemen, from any country on the planet, if it does not have the sign of the dollar on it, you do not know if it is a dollar from the United States of America or even United States, which is a corporation. On the description of the notes, it says United States of America, which is nothing more than an adverb-verb scenario. What that means is that the language follows no grammatic order, because also it does not have any sign of any dollar sign on it pertaining to the United States or United States of America. This now makes it a worthless piece of note. It has no value. Let me explain a little bit more. The word dollar, ladies and gentlemen, comes from any country that is a republic. Any country that is of the people has the ability to use the word dollar. On here, ladies and gentlemen, how you designate or identify $1 note from one country to another is it must have the dollar sign on it, as well as the wordings pertaining to that dollar. So the people printing it can take jurisdiction of that note. This was in the private, and it was printed in the private, not in the public. It has come into my hands from the private into the public as evidence. Since these notes, and we have checked the history of it, and we cannot find any notes having any signs of the dollar on it. The dollar sign, of course, being this, as well as one single line running across it. If it was gold back, it would have two lines on it, like the Red Fox stamp, which has the dollar sign on it, like your post office stamps, which have the dollar sign on it. The significance of that is that the pound or dollar, in this case the dollar stamp with the sign in it, designates it as of value, and that is the currency. That is the currency of the post office. This note, and repeating myself again, has no designation. It has no dollar sign on it. It is 100% fraud. Full stop on that. I will now move on to the euro. You pull out the euro, ladies and gentlemen, and you will see it has no boxes in it. But the value sign, which is supposed to be the euro sign, which is this, with a double line running across it, meaning gold backed, is nowhere near within the designation of the number itself. It's separate. I was once confronted with a piece of paper from the courts, the fiction courts, and they wanted this much money, which they put inside a box, and then they put the value sign outside of the box somewhere else within another box, meaning that this game that is playing in this box is different from the game that is being played on that box. That, ladies and gentlemen, brings the Federal Reserve Bank all over the world, the central reserve banks all over the world, the center banks, which are all controlled by private banks, private individuals, are operating in 100% fraud. And their private notes has entered into the public domain. And that which protects the public domain is the military in each country. I will come on to that later, further on. This breach of trust, ladies and gentlemen, is the very breach. Let me rephrase it again. Trust, ladies and gentlemen, is the very foundation of what men and women conduct themselves with. And when you have privateers that have been perpetrating this level of fraud on the public, it now becomes a matter for the police forces as well as the forces at hand, i.e. the Navy or any citizen on this planet now has the ability to go in from the private, from the public into the private to put these people under arrest for perpetrating crimes of a magnitude that I am unable to measure because of the multitude of notes that they have released. Since the very foundation of trust has been breached, and the serial numbers in these documents are the serial numbers that they have printed. As of now, every single one of these notes is in the public and the boxes have been removed. The boxes have been purged from this piece of paper. And that includes all the other notes as well. This is another piece of evidence. It is Vietnamese Federal Reserve. On here, it has 500,000. 500,000 of what? Dollars. It doesn't even have the dollar sign on it. It has nothing on it, ladies and gentlemen. It is an empty note. And as a federal postal court judge, as well as the citizens of this planet listening to me, as well as those people that are in a fiduciary position, including the military, the Navy, the Air Force, the church leaders, the leaders of the faith, they have now been walked into the misprision rule of treason, and in the US, the misprision rule of a felony. These notes have, like the US dollar, which is synonymous with the petroleum dollar, have been exchanging real minerals of this earth for their empty notes, which is 100% fraud and counterfeit, pretending to be things of value. And by doing so have breached trust in every country in the world, and any country that has been exchanging the US dollar as a means of buying things of a factual nature. The privateers are now, as of now, have been caught out. And the fiduciaries of this planet have been walked in and educated on the fraud, not just the language. Yes, the language itself as well, but the language of openly stating what the value of these notes are, which is not to be found on these pieces of paper, like the US dollar $10 bill. The dollar designation, and repeating myself the dollar designation doesn't have the sign, and therefore it has no value. The houses, ladies and gentlemen, that you have been buying with these worthless notes, in exchange for these worthless notes, are 100% evidence of the fraud that is in your face, in plain sight, as it were, on this geometric level playing field in this public domain. The role of the Navy is to safeguard factual money. These are not factual money. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been going to war to try to add value to these notes by you guys, you ladies, sweating on it, as in earning the sweat of your brow, as in the sweat of your brow. The job of the Navy is to protect value, and these notes have no value whatsoever. The other job of the Navy, and the word Navy comes from the word naval. When you are born, a birth certificate is created, a live birth certificate of live birth, and that's attached to the naval, and that is attached to the Navy. to safeguard the men and women from such fraudsters and privateers. The privateers, ladies and gentlemen, will be hunted down like the individuals behind the Privy Council in the UK. Today is election day, but of course, let me rephrase that. It is voting day, and I will come on to that later on in this presentation. Their job is to safeguard the birth certificate so you can operate in commerce, as well as designate that you are a live life claimant, albeit a live birth certificate. Either one, the job of the Navy and the armed forces is to protect that. Protecting this is of no value since it has no value. There is nothing here. This is a copy of my birth certificate from Singapore. And this is a copy of my Live Life claim with David Wayne Miller's flag on it. The job of the Navy is to protect that. And as a Chief Federal Postal Court judge, it is my duty to protect the citizens of this planet, to stop and correct with the armed forces as my aid. In Britain, England, United Kingdom, people are getting these letters across. This came through my letterbox. It has my address on it, albeit my abode. It has no name on it, and it has the insignia of some fiction cartoon on it, pretending to be, shall we say, the government of England, United Kingdom, albeit Britain. Either one, not really quite sure, since it's a cartoon. This census form, ladies and gentlemen, pretending to be from the government, does not have my name, and yet my name is known to the government, since I have a contract with them. But this document does not, and it's in an envelope. An envelope that's got a window in it, which means I have to peer into it as if I am examining it. When you get this letter through, ladies and gentlemen, and since it does not have your name on it, it is actually an offer to contract to form a trust position. So it is an offer of a contract of trust position. And since they don't have your name on it, and it's come through a P.O. box, and a P.O. box is a non-contracting venue, that is why you cannot open a bank account with it or anything else. Any accounts cannot be opened with a P.O. box. When you fill this out, which are also in boxes like the dollar notes, like the pound notes, and so many of these notes, you have essentially walked yourself into giving up your details to form a trust position. A trust position, ladies and gentlemen, is simply a person that generates it, the person that creates a trust. This is an offer to create such a trust. And when you put your details on it, they write back to you putting it into all capitals, which means you are nom de guerre, a dead horse, a war horse, a victim of maritime capsizing, which is what the churches do. This is why when you walk into a church, it's a Noah's Ark capsized. Have a look at it. Now that they have your details in boxes, they now form a trust. And when you form a trust, it does not matter whether that you have formed the trust, whether that you have generated the trust, the grantor, or who the executive is. The beneficiary of that trust can be anybody outside of that trust position. And once that grantor, the offer, has been accepted to form the trust position, and you have surrendered your details in, whether you are the beneficiary of this trust position is a hearsay. It is done under presumption and assumption, like these notes that do not have any designation, but your postage stamps do, of the dollar sign, pound sign, euro sign. This, ladies and gentlemen, allows the de facto government, the corporatocracy, the corporate government, to form a trust position and reverse that trust position, so they now become the beneficiaries of that trust. And what you are doing is just simply donating into that trust. The means to be able to reverse these things is what I will be doing, and already have started the process. This, ladies and gentlemen, is going to backfire on them in ways that they have no idea of. Ideas of which are going to come to fruition in the next coming few weeks. I think I have explained the nature of the offer of a trust and what happens when you put your name inside these boxes, which have different rules running inside each box. Why would a government that is supposed to be all-seeing, all-knowing, all-powerful, use a P.O. box and not use my name? Why, ladies and gentlemen? Because there are laws, and they are frightened of these laws. These laws protect men and women from such levels of fraud, and this is evidence, and it is now being entered into the Federal Postal Courts for examination and for prosecution. Before I leave the subject of the dollars, unfortunately, human beings, as David Wayne Miller said, run on presumption and assumption. All this time, and this includes me as well, have been subliminally adding these values in my head and projecting it onto these notes where there are none. Now that my cerebral functions, my thinking is starting to clear up, I am beginning to see more and more fraud and more of the power to be able to stop and correct and use the armed forces to do this. I will give you an example which David himself has used on his teaching technologies. I want every single one of you to look at this and read it out to yourselves. Read it out to yourselves. Over 99% of you, if not 90% of you, would have read Paris in the Spring, Once in a Lifetime, Bird in the Hand. What you've actually seen is different, and what you think you are seeing is different what is actually on the paper. On the paper it says Paris in the spring, once in a lifetime, bird in the hand. Now that you have witnessed how these simple frauds take place, but highly effective levels of fraud, using all manner of breaches of contract through foul play, is a true breach of contract. Ladies and gentlemen, liars lie because they know the truth. The question is, now, why does the government lie? It's because there are laws, and they are petrified of these laws because these laws are protected, and they are controlled, and they have forces behind them. They can try as many of these hypnotic techniques as they can, but it's not working. Human beings all over the world are birthing into the corona period. The various corporate governments that have got you believing a corona is a virus is to try to lock you into this level of hypnosis that is being in front of your face all the time. And yes, occasionally the Pope takes out advertising saying, wake up. Why would anybody take out a piece of advertising to say, wake up, if the general public is asleep? Ladies and gentlemen, you have been asleep in the private zone for a very long time. You are now within the public zone, and within the public zone there are laws. Laws that conduct, laws that protect, laws that police the conduct of men and women. A crime in the private is a crime. A crime in the public is still a crime. Slavery, ladies and gentlemen, is slavery, whether it's in the private or in the public. It is still slavery. The banking, fraud, and the mortgages. We are in the month of a faith known as Ramadan for the Muslims people. For the Muslims people of this world that have taken out mortgages, I am letting you know that in this holy of month, a mortgage is a death pledge, and anybody holding a death pledge is not in any holy state of condition. This level of perpetration has been done to you by the people that created these death pledges, because that is what mortgage means. It means a death pledge. And any men and women listening to this, you are duty bound to inform each other, as well as to share this video with many people as you can, to realize that a great crime has been committed and a great wickedness has entered this world, living amongst us, perpetrating the levels of crime that I am now porting with you. Mortgage being one of them. I will give you a bureaucratic mechanism of fraud, of how these death pledges are created. Since you have worked so very hard, which means you have had added value to pieces of paper that hold in trust the nature of your sweat equity, your commercial energy, your life force, your spiritual energy. Since each one of these notes have it, you wish to buy a house. This is the scenario. So you go into the bank and you put your money in for a house like a deposit. And when you have authorized a piece of paper to say that you wish to take out a mortgage, which by all innocence you thought was nothing more than a loan from the bank that allowed you to have a home. When you put that money into a deposit account in a personal deposit account, and you taken out and authorized the signing of a mortgage, that money is now taken and put into a private bank. A private bank, by its nature, past tense, does not abide by any public laws. And within that system of that that private bank, notes are printed dry with no value whatsoever. It's just like me printing money off on my photocopier. They print it off and they now take it out of the private bank, which is theirs, and they put it into your personal account, where it can now be transferred into somebody else's account, adding the value of the house that the seller and the buyer has worked so very hard. In other words, the money, the notes, which is not money at all, that were coming out of these private banks are worthless notes in exchange for your sweat equity. This is called a crime. It is also the nature of a parasite that will convince you this has value. But in reality, these private banks did create nothing. It is quite literally a piece of paper that was printed off as on the back of a house that you wish to buy in good faith. When this happens, a breach of contract has taken place, because a good faith that is broken is a breach. And since sweat equities and since birth certificates are now involved, the army has to be involved, the Navy, the armed forces. Let us come back to the censors. When the censors now take possession of your document, which you became an informant of on it, informant means to inform on a crime, i.e. you are informing on yourself, they have made themselves the beneficiaries of your sweat equity. In doing so, ladies and gentlemen, in doing so, they hope to take control, and have done so successfully, your live birth certificates, as well as your commercial activity known as a birth certificate. So anybody on this planet that has filled out a so-called census form, which is in boxes, which is a violation of contract law, albeit postal contract law because it came through the post office, using a PO box is already in violation of contract law, i.e. faith, albeit trust. Trust being three parties. Who the beneficiary, of course, can be anybody that the trust exists for. In this case, a corporatocracy that has grown very rich and very fat on the backs of you hardworking Americans, on the backs of your very hardworking Mexicans, and you citizens of the United Kingdom, Britain, England, and every other country in the world. I live in a place called Newham Borough. Borough means barren. This is why they change words. And you have what is known as a Newham Trust. I am the beneficiary of that trust. They are here just simply to administrate it. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand and know the simplicity of what I am saying. You have to always be the beneficiary of your sweat equity, and nobody else can conduct your affairs for you apart from yourself, because you know your business better than anybody else does. So therefore, you must conduct your own affairs, your own business. The the UK Treasury, England Treasury, gold, is actually owned by Shukuk law. It's governed by Shukuk law. Shukuk law is the principles of Sharia laws in commercial activity. And I am letting you folks know that is of faith, that when you have banks charging interest rates, they have already violated and soiled your faiths. Their argument as of so far has been that, well, since you are accepting the interest rates, on your bank accounts, why can't we charge you interest? For the people of Islam on this holy month, you must write a letter. You must write to the bank and say you do not want any interest rates on your bank account or your savings. You do not want any interest because interest is against the very foundation of virtually every faith on this planet, because itself is a mechanism of slavery. And you know what lengths and breadths that your prophets, the men and women that you have benefited from, what lengths that they went to set these slaves free. Once you have done this, ladies and gentlemen, that you have wrote a letter to your bank saying that you cannot accept interest rates and all interest rates are to be reversed, you are now in a position to say I cannot accept the interest rate that you are giving me, because that's a violation of my faith. And he who violates a faith and tries to destroy a mother man's faith or a family or a nation is in direct conflict with the Creator itself. So I would ask every single one of you, irrespective of what your faith is, Christian, Jew, Muslim, whoever you are, whatever you are, which interest rates by logic alone makes you poor, ladies and gentlemen. Do not accept their interest rates of 1 or 2% into your savings accounts and bank accounts, and now you will be in a position to say we can't possibly participate in your fraud and accept that you are charging interest rates on debt pledges and loans and credit cards. We cannot participate in this. But we will, if you show us good faith, good language, in the correct name. That is the name that your mother and father gave you, not a corporatocracy, not the all caps name. In faith, you will think about consideration of returning the capital. This is the way forward for the citizens of this planet, ladies and gentlemen, where mortgage frauds are taking place. No man, no woman, no family, no faith can live in a world where there are mortgages. The next part of what I have to say pertains to the US citizens, United States of America. You have a constitution, whether that is written in Bible or not. Good faith is good faith, and congruence is what we are after. And in that 13th Amendment, it says abolition of slavery. And the abolition of slavery now has an exemption clause. That is, you will be a slave if you have a criminal record or gain a criminal record. In this country, ladies and gentlemen, and listen carefully to what I am saying. In this country, United Kingdom, England, Britain, as of even up to a year ago, the police used to go around giving people tickets for all manner of things on further examination. What they were saying is that what you have done is a crime. I.e., if accidentally a tissue paper fell out of your pocket, a certificate, or be it a receipt, was given to you to say that you have performed a crime. If they found a rubbish bag, they would put a label on that rubbish bag, examine that rubbish bag to see whose addresses are in there, and then say that is a environmental crime. What they have done, ladies and gentlemen, and what they are doing is that they are criminalizing those things which we considered of a civil nature. Once you criminalize a US citizen, irrespective of what race, what creed, whatever level you exist in economics, white privilege, black privilege, green privilege, or whatever it is, whatever status you're in, when you have one of these tickets, you have been entered into as a slave. Now the court systems will govern that contract, that you are a slave. Look it up, ladies and gentlemen, 13th Amendment, where it has the clause that prisoners or anybody that has performed a crime, historical or not, whether it's spent, is automatically a slave. They are a slave. And in doing so, ladies and gentlemen, the court systems, which are essentially private chambers, what is known as star chambers, bring you into their private jurisdiction with their foul language to harvest you of a 80-20% ratio. You keep 20, they take 80. This is a crime. And as a result, they have to be arrested and put into FEMA camps. Such people, whether they're in a public or in a private cannot exist on our planet because they walk around violating laws, and they themselves are the criminals. Listen to what I have said very carefully. I will say it again. Whether you have robbed a bank or that you have had a simple traffic violation, if it is on there as a crime and within the system as a crime, irrespective of whether you are in prison or not in prison, your name has been entered as a slave into the United States corporation for you to give up your sweat equity as a ratio of slave master to a slave, which is called 80-20. 80 is the master, 20 is what the slave keeps. Look at your bills, look at your bank accounts. Isn't that the ratio that is being taken place again and again? In the US, ladies and gentlemen, at this moment, give and take, of course, there is 2.3 million people in prison for crimes that are not crimes, but have been designated as crimes. When the police do this, they are participating in slavery, slave trading, and that is a criminal offense. Whether you're a sheriff or a deputy, you are now duty bound to stop and correct yourself. If not, there will be consequences. Just like these censor forms, just like these privateers, just like the Privy Council know that the federal postal courts are coming for them. Sorry about the plural. It is the singular. Federal Postal Court is coming for them because this is all evidence. And for you US citizens, I am so very sorry that for so long you did not know that a simple traffic altercation or a mistake has been criminalized and turned and recorded as a crime so they may recruit the numbers as a slave. Look at the history of yourself. You do not need to go into the history of your country. Just look at how many occasions the courts, the police have tried to make simple things into a criminality. I.e., somebody takes out, like a fox taking out a rubbish black bin and dragging it on a street, and then a police enforcement officer comes along, examines it, puts a label on it saying it is an environmental crime, examines it for paperwork. If your name is on it, they will say it's you and you have performed the crime, and therefore you are a criminal, and therefore you are not part of the Constitution. It is the spirit in which they are doing this that is so foul to mankind, it will not be tolerated. And you have seen this where children have been involved, and the sheriffs and the deputies and the police officers, as well as the constables. And I am not sure if the constables have done this, so I will withdraw this. But the police officers that will incriminate and make something of a criminal nature when your children are just simply playing on the streets. Zero tolerance, ladies and gentlemen, is the word for this corona period. No one can tolerate privateers, and the army has taken oath to hunt down these privateers, these private operators in public waterways, in public roads, and in public banks, to take them out. And since their notes have entered the public realm, the public domain, privateers, FEMA camps to you. Ladies and gentlemen, as of now, every single US embassy will become a federal postal court venue, where the perpetrators of these crimes will be summoned in as courts and punishments will be handed out. The word penitentiary comes from the word penance. By their own Vatican license, they have to show penance. Their accounts will begin to zero, and they will have to serve penance in a penitentiary, whether that be in a FEMA camp or one of the federal prisons. This includes also judges that have been masquerading as judges. This includes clerks. This includes all of these people that have performed such levels of cruelty, such levels of hatred, bitterness, and vulgarities that are against human nature itself. You are going to go to prison. In addition to this, these embassies that are becoming federal postal courts, which will be happening in the next few weeks, as I get to work, as it were, will become the task forces to clean up this planet, this earth, this world of ours, of such privateers that will pass off these counterfeit notes as money, because anything that is pertaining to be money that is not is counterfeiting. And counterfeiting is post office business. And as a Chief Federal Postal Court judge, that comes in within my domain. There are Federal Postal Court judges all around the world to deal with these things. And as I said, I will be busy. I will be busying myself making this happen for the citizens of this world. The Marines that protect these embassies, US embassies or any other embassies, because they eventually will become federal postal courts. The Marines will become my tipstaffs, albeit the tipstaffs for the Federal Postal Court, and bailiffs, so they can go out and get these individuals, whether they are in the private or in the public. Look at the oxymoron, ladies and gentlemen. Look up the word Privy Council in the United Kingdom, Britain, England. And privy means it's private, which means the names and addresses, who they are, what they are, supposed to be private. And yet they're in the public domain. Privateers, you cannot hide behind the names that are in the public and pretend that it's in the private. Since you have decided to put their names in the public, pretending to be in the private domain, you have already violated. And your names will be subject to penalization. You will serve time for it. The evidence and the citizens of this world are in a position of zero tolerance. On a separate note, I wish Janet from Wisconsin, the sister of a very good friend of mine, I wish you to contact me or one of the family members, because I have lost contact with you. Please do contact me so we may speak. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me. It has been a pleasure serving this world, this community, the Federal Postal Courts. And it is a pleasure for me to continue serving the people of this planet. And it is my pleasure and very grateful thanks for David Wayne Miller that enabled all of these things to take place. So on a final note, I want every single one of you to thank David Wayne Miller, because he is the reason why you folks are going to become, this is the reason why you folks are going to become the beneficiaries of this planet. Thank you very much for listening to me. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, bye-bye now.